Democrats are now realizing they might have made a big mistake.
Look, she's going to get slaughtered. They're coming out. They're coming, and this is just part of no different than it was any other time. And they have got to get up and get ready, and they've got to be able to defend and attack at the same time. And there's going to be a time of struggle of definition as to who Vice President Harris is. And we better be ready for that.
That's a great question. Who is Kamala Harris? Let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, I am radical. I do believe that we need to get radical about what we are doing and take it seriously.
Kamala Harris is a San Francisco radical, tagged as the most liberal senator to the left of Bernie Sanders. And if she gets her hands on America, she'll empty the prisons.
I absolutely am without any question, committed to reducing the prison population. I'm not going to commit to a specific number because I want to make sure I can meet it. But I am committed to drastically reducing our prison population.
Kamala doesn't want to lock up more criminals, and the criminals who are already locked up, she wants to let them out early. And if you're on death row for murder, she wants to let you vote.
Jesse Watter came out swinging at Kamala Harris this week as he critiqued her and titled her as a radical leftist. He even made claims that her policies and beliefs threaten the safety of the American government and the safety of America in general. He points out her faulty ideals for the criminal justice system and whether or not prisoners should have the right to vote. Jesse also pointed out Kamala's flawed plan for the gun owners in our country, as if defunding the police wasn't bad enough. Jesse also made it clear how he feels about Kamala's stance on the border and ICE's role when handling these undocumented immigrants. This wasn't the only time that Jesse Watters has spoken out against Vice President Harris either.
People who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bomber, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation.
Kamala wants ballot harvesting inside of prisons. She also wants to defund the police.
It is wrong-headed thinking to think that the only way you're going to get communities to be safe is to put more police officers on the street.
Where do you stand on defund the police?
Look, right. So here's the thing. Defund the police. The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety.
So when the prisons are emptied and the police are defunded, she wants to seize your guns so you can't defend yourself.
While in a discussion with The Five on Fox News, Jesse began to dig into exactly how radical Kamala is as a politician. He also discussed her poor record as VP, and even before that, Jesse also makes a point to mention how weak Kamala Harris actually was as the vice president, as she failed to do almost everything that was assigned to her. She even was sent to warn Russia not to invade Ukraine, and a week after that, Russia said, "Screw it. Who cares what she thinks? Let's do it anyway."
Mandatory buyback means the government knocks at your door, takes your rifle, and mails you a tiny check. Your home won't be protected, and neither will the border.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented and cross the border as criminals. That's correct. That is correct.
So it's not a crime to break into the country in Kamala's America, but if you do and you rape a kid, ICE won't pick you up because ICE will be gone.
I think there's no question that we've got to critically re-examine ICE and its role and the way that it is being administered and the work it is doing, and we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Well, you might as well start from scratch, too, because your job will be gone. Kamala Harris backs AOC's Green New Deal and wants to ban American natural gas exploration.
I am offering a Green New Deal that has been described as one of the most aggressive and progressive. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes.
The Green New Deal taxes cow flatulence, spends billions on solar-powered airplanes, seems safe, and sends millions of American energy jobs to China. And after your job's gone, she wants to take away your private health insurance, too.
You support the Medicare for All bill, I think initially co-sponsored by Senator Bernie Sanders. You're also a co-sponsor on it. I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
Kamala keeps her nice health care, But you have to wait in line for months like a Canadian to see a doctor, or die on a waiting list. But if you're in prison, you get the best health care ever.
I made sure that they changed the policy in the state of California so that every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access to the medical care that they desired and need.
Taxpayer-funded sex changes for prison inmates.
To make things even worse for VP Harris, Jesse Waters made an excellent point when he said that she'd had things handed to her throughout her career. She wasn't necessarily voted into her position. She was given it. The big question is, does the U.S. dislike heirs as much as Waters thinks? With how hard Jesse is swinging, though, I'm sure he'll rattle some cages. He even continues to talk about Kamala by discussing the fact that she most likely lied about Joe Biden's condition while he was president, despite saying that she would never do that. Jesse even called her a radical lunatic from San Francisco. He wasn't just throwing shade, though, as he brings up the fact that even most of the people in her own team have abandoned her at this point.
$100,000 surgery so men can switch to women's prisons and have more fun. If the country weren't bankrupt enough, how about some reparations?
Should black people get reparations?
I think there has to be some form of reparations, and we can discuss what that is.
That's the Kamala Harris record. She's extreme, she's dangerous, she's flat out crazy. After Trump pointed all of that out, the Harris campaign says she doesn't believe those things anymore. Their defense is, yeah, all those things Kamala said 4 years ago were lies. This isn't a woman you can trust. And the biggest lie she told was that Joe Biden had his act together. She lied right to our face.
If there ever is a problem, do you think that you could go tell the American public? Do you think in your role that you're in a position to do that?
Of course, if necessary, but there's no need for that.
There was. This is a radical and power-hungry San Francisco sideshow who will do or say anything to get ahead. She's done nothing to help you get ahead. She gets ahead. It's all about her. And everything she's gotten has been handed to her. The California machine promoted her. She didn't win competitive races. She's a Democrat in California. The only time she faced serious competition, she flamed out. Not a single vote. She called Joe Biden a racist and then joined his ticket. Joe got lucky because of COVID, brought her along for the ride, and then the two of them wrecked the country. Joe made her border czar. She never showed up to work. Death and destruction everywhere. He put her in charge of that voting bill. Failed. Thank God. He sent her to Europe to warn Russia not to invade Ukraine. Putin laughed and invaded the same week. She's not respected overseas. She's not respected on the left. A year ago, they tried to kick her off the ticket. She's not even respected by her own staff. They've all quit. She's not respected because she's an incompetent San Francisco socialist whose administration almost got Trump assassinated. Let 10 million foreigners pour into the country and spent so much money on boondoggles that inflation raged and crushed your wages. USA Today said Kamala's biggest accomplishment as vice president was visiting an abortion clinic. When he was VP, Al Gore invented the internet, okay? Now, if they install this woman into the White House, the military-industrial complex is going to control her. We'll be at war with Russia before you know it. Lobbyists are already licking their chops. They can't wait to grease the Harris administration. It's like taking candy from a baby. This is a frivolous fraud who hasn't solved a single problem, gotten on top from handouts, never lifting a finger to help the American people. She's only there to help herself. America can't afford Kamala Harris. This is not a joke.
Jesse also had a few positive comments about former President Donald Trump's appearance at the Black Journalists Convention in Chicago, and more importantly, the fact that Kamala Harris couldn't make it. According to Jesse, Trump essentially ripped the news cycle right out of Kamala's hands. And he's absolutely right. This is going to affect her campaign big time. Jesse also brings up that Kamala's failure to show up is the equivalent of her taking the black vote for granted, unlike Trump, who plans to work with and for Black Americans. Waters continues by praising Trump and pointing out that whether you like his attitude or not, his disdain for disrespect is what makes him a great leader and someone that the American people should want as president.
This election's crazier than a soup sandwich. One president dropped out, the other was shot in the head. Now you've got a female black Democrat campaigning for the white vote and a white Republican guy campaigning for the black vote. And the Hispanics are like, hola, over here. Trump flew to Chicago today for the Black Journalists Convention, first-time Republican nominee to do that in 20 years. Kamala was also invited, but she said she was too busy. But the guy who showed up was treated worse than the woman who ditched.
I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense, and then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was wrong.
Mr. President, I would love if you can answer the question on your rhetoric and why you believe that black voters should trust you with another 4 years.
I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
Unlike Biden and Kamala, who, as Jesse puts it, only care about making Americans feel comfortable with their words while the country continues to become messier and messier. He also points out that Kamala is responsible for allowing illegal immigrants into the country, essentially putting them into black neighborhoods and then giving them access to welfare that most Americans couldn't dream of receiving. And according to Jesse, the black community is furious with her over this, especially since she didn't have the gall to show up to the Black Journalists Conventions.
That moment changed the campaign. Donald Trump ripped the news cycle right out of Kamala's hands. That exchange is going to be seen by millions of black Americans. It'll be seen by everyone. And how they react to it will decide the country's future. This is like the Megyn Kelly moment at the debate. Remember, only Rosie O'Donnell. It's going to leave a mark. They say half of life is showing up. Donald Trump showed up. Kamala Harris didn't. Donald Trump didn't have to go to the National Black Journalists Convention in Chicago. What just happened could even cost him votes. But he wanted to go because, as president, he wants to work for them. Kamala not showing up is taking the black vote for granted. If you're invited into someone's house and they disrespect you, doesn't matter who they are, what they look like, black, female, whatever, Trump doesn't tolerate disrespect. And as president, whether you like him or not, whether he makes you feel uncomfortable or not, that's the attitude you want in a leader. Someone who works for your vote and who doesn't allow the country to be disrespected. Might not look pretty, but it works. and his presidency proved that. Mr. Nice Guy Joe Biden and laughing Kamala Harris, politically correct, but cowards, won't stand up for our sovereignty or our safety. So what if Biden and Harris say all the right things and don't make you feel anxious? Country's a mess. Your feelings are the problem. These insecure people are so privileged that they're putting their own personal feelings about a president's vibe over their own countrymen's lives. People are being hurt in America by smooth-talking politicians. In that moment, Trump's not worried, does this hurt me politically? He's defending his honor. He's doing what he thinks is right because his policies benefited the black community more than Biden-Harris's. He doesn't care if you call him rude or racist if he knows he's doing what's right. This country's in too bad of shape to be so sensitive. Black communities are furious that Kamala Harris, a black woman, flooded their neighborhoods with migrants and showered the foreigners with welfare. And she didn't show up today.
My message is to stop people from invading our country that are taking, frankly, a lot of problems with it. But one of the big problems, and a lot of the journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
And
Mr.
they're taking the employment away from black people. They're coming in, they're invading. It's an invasion of millions of people, probably 15, 16, 17 million people. I have a feeling it's much more than that. And everybody's been seeing what's happened. The first group of people, the black population, is affected most by that, and Kamala is allowing it to happen.
Could Kamala Harris sit in front of an audience like that, a black audience, and justify pumping millions of migrants into their streets? They're not putting migrant shelters in the white dudes for Harris neighborhoods. They're putting them in the south side of Chicago. But the ABC reporter didn't want to listen and kept interrupting him. And Trump was a pretty good sport, even after they kept him waiting 30 minutes and couldn't get the audio straight.
Jesse also had some choice words about the Democrat machine not too long ago, and their initial decision to back Kamala when it was announced that President Biden was stepping out of the race. When Jesse puts it that way, saying that Kamala invaded Biden's administration and now had her hands on his war chest, it really shines a light on how Vice President Harris has played her role over the last 4 years. Though, as Waters also pointed out, Kamala is quick to put a lot of the shortcomings from their term onto Joe's plate rather than her own. Specifically, the poor way that the Biden administration handled the COVID-19 pandemic, as she gives Joe all the credit for it. I'm not sure if that's credit that he would want, though. Now, it's funny that Biden is backing Kamala's run for president when, as Jesse puts it, Biden wasn't willing to back her before. He even claims that VP Harris is polling worse with women and minorities than Biden was, which puts her 4.6 points behind Trump in Georgia alone.
The Democrat machine is backing Kamala. Pelosi endorsed her, donors are forking over millions, and half of Biden's delegates already said they're behind her. She invaded the Biden campaign headquarters in Wilmington and got her hands on Joe's war chest. And now we know Biden's alive. He called in and said now he works for Kamala.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be out there in the campaign with her, with Kamala. I'm going to be working like hell. You know, what we still need to save this democracy. And Trump is still a danger to the community. He's a danger to the nation. And I know I'll be doing whatever Kamala wants me or needs me to do in addition.
Biden didn't even campaign for himself. Now he's going to campaign for Kamala? And does Kamala really want to be on stage with Joe Biden? Well, let's hear from Mamala herself.
Can we just give it up again for my husband? It is so good to hear our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call, and we've been talking every day. You guys heard it from Doug's voice. We love Joe and Jill. We really do. They truly are like family to us. And we do, everybody here does.
It's mutual.
I knew you were still there. You're not going anywhere, Joe.
I'm watching you, kid. I'm watching you, kid. I love you.
I love you, Joe.
Kamala might love Joe, but she doesn't love what he left her. Kamala went from here's what we did to here's what he did.
Joe got the COVID-19 pandemic under control. Remember those days? He has created more than 15 million new jobs. He brought together Republicans and Democrats and passed historic legislation. Joe has stood up for democracy at home, and he has stood up for democracy abroad, and he has always stood up for what he believes is right. President Joe Biden fights for the American people, and we are deeply, deeply grateful for his service to our nation.
She went from we to he fast. Biden might have brain fog, but we don't. We're not going to forget what the Biden-Harris administration did to this country. Same policies, new face. Sure, Kamala's young, but she's not likable. Her entire staff quit. A big reason why Biden didn't drop out earlier was because he didn't think Kamala could beat Trump. And the polls showed Joe's right. Trump's beating her by 9 points. In Georgia, she's doing worse with women and minorities than Biden was.
Jesse then goes on to belittle the fact that the Democratic Party tried to run an unfit candidate, talking about Joe Biden, and they got caught, which is not something that should be overlooked. If a group is willing to run an unfit candidate just to save face one time, they're likely willing to do it again. Once again, the Democrat machine simply looks like a bunch of money-hungry puppet masters.
Beat Trump, why'd they whack Biden? Because Kamala doesn't have dementia. Democrats in the media tried to run a mentally diminished candidate and got caught. She's just the next puppet in line. They're going to fake a process to make it look like she earned the nomination, but the Democrat nominee is going to be picked by donors, not a single voter. Donors starved Joe Biden for cash, watched his polls plummet, and forced him to sign a resignation letter from bed with a gun to his head. Biden's whole presidency was a cover-up, and they think nominating the woman who had a front row seat to it makes it go away? No. Democrats smashed and grabbed 14 million votes from Biden and then just redistributed them to Harris. She didn't earn this. She inherited it. And Americans aren't hot on heirs. They like self-made men and women. They're brainwashing us. We know they're brainwashing us, but they don't think we know. The Wall Street Journal out with a massive report today that Washington insiders and foreign diplomats have known Biden was comatose for years and worked around the clock to hide it from you. Biden hasn't met with House Democrats about legislation for 3 years. He hasn't held a cabinet meeting in almost a year. Foreign dignitaries say Biden had to bail out in the middle of meetings. Donors saying he'd tell the same story 2 times. If you tried to speak out, you were threatened and blackballed. The strategy was ignore the problem, nothing to see here, and run out the clock. Joe Biden wasn't even a part of the Biden administration. He was just a prop while his lieutenants ran the executive branch. He didn't even know his Secret Service director was a woman. It's the biggest cover-up in American history. They rigged the primary, then detonated Joe at the debate and played shocked that he was shot. Putin knew he was shot. He met with Biden one-on-one in 21, sized him up. A few months later, he invades Ukraine. He took advantage of him. So did the mega donors and the media. And when they turned on him, it was over. Biden doesn't have a base. There's no Biden movement. People chanting his name, Joe, don't go. It was man versus machine. And the machine made Joe fire himself. He was the only person he'd ever fired. They're saying if Joe's not fit enough to run for president, then he can't be president. So we have to 25th Amendment him out of there and make Kamala president? She's even more radical and incompetent than he is. You're going to give her Air Force One, the presidential seal, and have her hug hurricane victims in September? No. Republicans should launch an immediate investigation into the Biden cognitive cover-up. Subpoena all the White House aides, the White House doctor, and Kamala Harris herself. Make her testify under oath. What did she know and when did she know it? In our exclusive interview with Trump and J.D. Vance, airing later tonight, we asked the former president about investigating the cover-up.
Even Jesse's co-host, Kayleigh McEnany, has brought up the fact that Kamala is unfit to run for president, especially since she can't seem to stick to her own identity. In a conversation with Jesse Waters, she even called it a case of identity theft and claimed that Kamala fled to a media fairy tale land. They mention all of the different and intense jobs that Kamala claims to have held in her career history, and how it all seems like something that a character out of a movie would claim.
Can she survive that scrutiny?
She may be able to, and here's why I say that. I just listened to the entirety of what you said, and that was clips of Kamala in her own words. And that came after me watching the 17-minute, I think that's what it was, Kamala rally. And I feel like I watched a case of identity theft. She has stolen the identity of a moderate, middle-of-the-road cultural icon and then fled to media fairy tale land where they will let her remake her identity. She talked about being a cop and locking up fraudsters and locking up racists, and then she moved to being this fearless California prosecutor in the tunnels with the cartels, leaving behind her whole record. This woman should be polling at 3%. She is not. This is why, if you're at the Trump campaign, the sign on your door, the sign in the windows, the sign on the corkboards needs to be policy, policy, policy. Because what you just played, Jesse, is the key to success to beating Kamala Harris. Donald Trump's still the favorite, but you got to take this lady seriously because she's a totally different woman than the clips you just played.
They'll take her seriously. They will, and they are. It's just tough to pivot now once Joe left and she's in. They got the honeymoon thing. That's okay. But we're in a new media environment, Kayleigh, and the media can only cover up so much. There are zillions of people watching these videos fly around to Kamala Harris. They're everywhere. She stuck her foot in her mouth so many times. She said so many crazy things about taking away health care, taking away guns, giving sex change surgeries to inmates on death row. This is crazy San Francisco lunacy, and it's on tape. You can't hide that. That's not like, oh, I voted for something in the 80s like Biden. This is like 4 years ago. You can't identify as a moderate that fast.
You can't. And Donald Trump's not going to let you, because I know this.
Jesse then continues the conversation by talking about how the Democrat media will only be able to cover up so much of the radical ideas that Kamala Harris has brought up, including sex changes for inmates. With fears of what Kamala and the rest of her administration might do to America if she's given the power of presidency, Jesse and Kayleigh also point out that she's using modern tactics to garner votes, including creating TikTok and using celebrity endorsements.
When he gets on that debate stage, he knows better than anyone how to dance across it. He trounced Hillary, he trounced Joe Biden. The only person to stand on that debate stage and end someone's political life tenure of 49 years, Trump did that. Trump can do it. He's got to take these moments on the national stage and use them wisely. And I think he will. You can't erase that history, but she will try. She joined TikTok. She's putting out these clever videos. She's mobilized the rappers. There was a rapper there with her tonight. She's going to use Hollywood. That's not enough, though. Hillary had all of that. That's not enough. And she's going to be standing against one of the most formidable political opponents that we've seen in a long time. I mean, once in a half century figure we've seen in Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's not going to be enough. She will eventually have to do a big TV interview where they're going to have to ask her about the cover-up and all of her stupid policy moves and about the disaster of the last 4 years. Donald Trump was just asked about the debate thing by Laura. Listen to this.
Her past, look at what she does, and look at what she used to say about herself, and I won't get into it, what she used to say and who she was compared to what she said starting at about 2016. She became a totally different person, only for political reasons.
Well, Donald. I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage, because as the saying goes, if you got something to say, say it to my face.
Okay, I don't even think she's taking herself seriously, though. But so Trump basically has two options. One, she's a radical. Two, she's a fraud. She has to defend both of those items. And when is this debate happening, Kayleigh? He already committed to Joe in September. Joe's gone. What's the deal with this next debate?
Well, here's why Trump's in a great position. Because the tables have turned. Remember when Trump came out and said, anytime, anywhere, any place? Well, we just watched. Kamala said basically that. So tonight, Trump should get out on True Social. Okay, to your face, I propose 3 dates. The first of which is going to be this coming up month in August. Don't let her take that DNC tailwind and fly away. Challenge her to a debate. Do it next month. Put 3 on the table. Kamala, we'll take you at your word.
That's smart. I think Trump should definitely listen to Kayleigh on that one. I like that a lot. Kayleigh, thanks as always.
He'll win him.
What do you think about Jesse Waters and his strong take on Kamala Harris and her campaign? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more great videos and modern history in the making.